Hey, welcome back to Chicago Reacts. My name is Michael. I'm an actor here in Chicago, and this
is Zach, also an actor here in Chicago. We've done a movie together. It should be coming out soon, so we're pretty excited.
Keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
But today we are jumping into more Warhammer content. Bricky has been helping us out. This is every single Warhammer 40k faction explained part 2. And we're gonna break this into 3 parts,
just like we did for his,
just
like we did for his part 1, just to make it a little more streamlined for us and for you guys.
Yeah. So we've already learned about all the human factions, and now we're gonna start jumping into the alien factions.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Hey all, this is part 2 in a 2-part series on the Warhammer races. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, we do the Imperium of Man. You can check that out in the description, and I would highly recommend you watch that to get context for this episode. If you already have, go ahead and keep on watching. So after an entire episode of nothing but humans, we can now talk about chaos, which involves humans again, but a little bit less. We also got demons and shit.
I just felt someone grab my ass.
What?
Like hard, Nick.
So, as I've mentioned many times before, we've discussed the war,
his
the
demon.
Imperium, the hellish landscape, the purgatory dimension realm between the material realm of our existence. Now, in the warp, it's terrifying, horrible. There are demons everywhere. Things are crazy. All your minds and thoughts and emotions get projected there. It is both formless and empty. It is vast and tiny. It obeys the laws of time and physics while simultaneously does absolutely nothing of the sort. It is a hodgepodge and a culmination of just unknowable, eldritch, horrifying shit. And there are 4 gods that permeate in
just
chaos and the
chaos.
war. These are the 4 major chaos gods. And if we wish to learn about chaos, we need to learn about each and every single one of these chaos gods. First up, we have Khorne, and he is the easiest. Khorne is your classic Satan. He is all about anger, murder, fighting, blood, guts, death. You ever heard the term blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne? That's Khorne. The whole idea is that he is all about the fury and strength of battle. He doesn't care where blood comes from, so long as blood is flowing. He wants to fight and murder and carnage and slaughter and death, 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 death. That is Khorne. Very simple to understand. Next up, you have Tzeentch, and Tzeentch is the god of change. However, the god of change permeates in so many different other ways. He's the most eldritch of all the demon gods. He has this weird way to always be plucking at the strings of the universe. He's always conniving and scheming and doing his best to cause as much little bullshit as he can. Tzeentch is unknowable. Everything that makes sense, he will and won't do. Every future and setting and every type of destiny or fate is all foretold and also changeable. It is set in stone while also completely random. He knows what everything is going to happen and also that none of it's going to happen. You would ask Tzeentch a question. That question leads to 3 more questions. And those questions lead to the heat death of the universe, which asks 4 answers to those questions. And then he thinks to himself, what are questions even really? And are you even asking the questions? Or are you simply giving paths to answers and other horse shit? Tzeentch is just, I'm gonna fuck with stuff. He is yes and he is no. He is the understanding and he is complexity. He is unknowable, and that's what the god of change is about. Very bizarre, and he likes birds a lot. I don't know why. Next up, we got Papa Nurgle. Papa Nurgle, he loves you for who you are. Probably not. He will murder you just the same. But Papa Nurgle is about rot.
What do you think he's cooking in that?
Death,
I wouldn't taste it.
He is the end of everything. Him and Tzeentch do not like each other very much because where Tzeentch represents change and adjustment, Nurgle represents stagnation and death. He is all about miasma and pestilence and large bloat and pus and organs and
it's
people
gross,
just
but I
being
like
sedentary,
it for some reason.
sloth. He is the idea that everything will rot and decay and die. Nothing is certain besides decay and death. All of us will end up the same way, and broken down through just sheer never-ending decomposition. So the joke
so
that
pretty
Nurgle
gross.
is
So
into
cool,
is generally
though.
because of that. Because we all end up the same. We all rot and we all die and wither. That's Nurgle, and he's got a general theme
That's
of course,
Nurgle.
pestilence and different kinds of diseases and sickness and things of that nature. That's generally Nurgle. He's pretty easy to understand as well, and he chunk. Finally, we have the youngest of the Chaos Gods, and that is Slaanesh, also known as the Prince of Pleasure or the God of Unspeakable Excess. Slaanesh is generally referred to with sex. But it's not only sex, it's just that's a good avenue if you want
Why
to
are there
think stuff.
three
Slaanesh is just the idea of the senses of the body being cranked
Your
to
guess is as
not
good
just
as mine.
11, but more like 17. See, we'll discuss Slaanesh a little bit more when we talk about the Eldar because they done fucked up. But he,
I like that foreshadowing.
it, or whatever, is mainly about just the excess of emotions. And therefore, sex is generally a large part of it. However, it's mostly pain and torture. Lots of pain, torture, but sometimes sexually related or drug related. Lots of drugs. Lots of drugs. Slaanesh gets off on everything. Extremes in happiness, extremes in sadness, extremes in pain and sadism and masochism. And of course, that goes along with the sex part of it as well. It's generally referred to with sex because of the color scheme, very purple, lots of exposed genitalia. A lot of their models have like exposed nipples and stuff. And that is generally the theme you go for from a physical side, but it really embodies everything, mainly pain and also the excessive amounts of emotion. So when it comes down to it, you'll find a lot of them have things like spikes or whips or any kind of BDSM style gear because it is unspeakable excess, the Prince of Pleasure, everything in excess to the point where it is just sheer frightening. That is Slaanesh in a nutshell. A little bit bizarre and a little hard to describe sometimes, but as we talk more about the Dark Eldar layer in this video, you'll understand it far, far better and far more than you'd want to. Now you might be thinking, why would anyone ever want to join Chaos? They all look horrifying, screwed up, and just frightening things, right? Well, the thing is that, of course, one, your mind is put into the warp and the Immaterium, so you can be easily swayed by chaos demons when they get into your head, especially if you're a psyker. Sometimes regiments of the less mentally strong people, whether they be civilians or, say, low-level guardsmen or conscripts, can be easily swayed by this and become chaos cultists and stuff, and they serve their dark gods and whatever god they personally prefer. However, and this might seem strange, chaos in their own right isn't necessarily evil. See, the warp is every manifestation of emotion and being, every soul, everything of existence. This includes all the good things. All the different chaos gods have another side to their coin. Khorne might be death, murder, slaughter, slaughter, but he's also got this weird sense of survival of the fittest, trial by combat, and honor. Khorne will never lie to you. Khorne will never stab you in the back. Khorne isn't about conniving and scheming. Khorne is about straight up mano-y-mano, you versus me, get in the ring, we're gonna murder each other hard right now. May not be a good thing at the end of the day.
We're gonna
Hard
murder
right
each
now.
other
Other side
hard
of the
right
coin.
now.
Him and Tzeentch generally don't get along because Tzeentch is that conniving schemer, but he's also about the idea of hope. Where there is change for your predicament. There is change for your problem. The hope of the galaxy, the ability to bend the world to your will, the idea that your fate is not set in stone, but in reality that you control your own destiny and can control it whenever you want, the changer of ways. That is Tzeentch. And of course, Tzeentch and Nurgle hate each other because while Nurgle does represent stagnation, death, and decay, he also represents finality and ending. The fact that you can be mentally at peace knowing that you will end and how you will end. Fear of the unknown, fear of change is not present with Nurgle. With Nurgle, everything will rot and die, and that provides that finality, that ability that this is over. We are all the same, and we will all end the same. We know the meaning of life. The meaning of life is to live and die and rot. And
It's really
with
cool
that,
the
it brings
duality with
peace
all
of
these
mind.
gods.
Slaanesh
Yeah,
is a lot
it's
more
really-
simple.
it's really
While they are
interesting,
the
actually.
excess of emotion, they are also the representation of emotion. Slaanesh embodies happiness. Slaanesh embodies excitement and joy and pleasure, not only in the sense of the physical, bam, style of pleasure, but also everything else like food.
You know,
Bricky always,
And,
Bricky
air
always
on
takes advantage of his
sunlight,
moments.
feeling, emotion and feeling. All of that is also represented with Slaanesh. So you have to ask, why are they always represented as super evil skulls and spikes on everything and want to murder everybody? I don't really got an answer for you on that one. My assumption is that because mentally humans may think worse thoughts, even if we don't act on them, and therefore they're projected in the warp more. That one's a little bit weird. I don't know. This is me spitballing right now, but I don't know. You need a super bad guy. You already got the Imperium of Man. You need somebody to be a little bit worse than them. So you got demons. Honestly, who cares? I just want to buy like a bird magician. Look at him. So cool. So combining all this together on the tabletop, Chaos Demons are generally very melee-based. They run in, go really hard. You have lots of summoning and conjuring, tons of spells. Generally a little bit frail, but they have special saves to make them a little bit stronger. You've got giant demons and smaller demons. You got hordes of little boys and tons of big guys. Demons are, as they say, demons.
Babies.
Nurgle is slow. Khorne is super scary in melee. You've got Tzeentch, who are far more into psychers and spellcasting, and then Slaanesh, who is all melee, really fast but squishy, but in lots of hordes of tons of melee and pain damage, of course. So overall, the demons are a huge part of 40k and a massive threat to almost every single faction, with the exception of a couple. However, the big part about demons is also transferred into the other 9 Primarchs we didn't talk about, which are the Chaos Space Marines.
Oh,
So
these
Horus
are the ones that were
and all of his boys,
transformed.
all of them in the Primarchs, they have all also become Chaos Boys, and they all have their own special Chaos Legions, specializing in so many different things, just
Very
like
cool.
the Adeptus
Kinda looks like
Astartes,
Hellboy.
the Angels of Death, the regular
Yeah,
Space
it
Marines.
does.
Chaos Space Marines aren't a whole lot different than the regular Space Marines. They have the same armor, generally the same training and toughness. They just specialize in different kinds of things. And also a lot of the Primarchs have ascended into greater demons? They're demon Primarchs at this point. Gigantic, horrifying man-demon hybrids that are pretty awesome, if I'm going to be honest. They look really cool. But them and their associated legions that they are a part of are all kind of going out there and causing a large ruckus for everyone else. Considering the raw strength and firepower of a legion of Space Marines, imagine that entire legion just converting to chaos and immediately fighting you. It's generally pretty horrifying. There's a lot of them, so I gotta write them down. But you've got the Emperor's Children with Primarch Fulgrim, loyal to Slaanesh. These people, they are some messed up people. They're just sensory overload, tons of drugs, tons of torture. And I think Fulgrim is a demon Primarch right now. And oh god, I am terrified to see what that man looks like. At least on the tabletop, because Emperor's Children are not good people. You've got the Iron Warriors, which are kind of like opposite of the Imperial Fists, with Primarch Perturabo, I believe is his name. They're Chaos Undivided. They just kind of serve Chaos in a general aspect instead of choosing one of the 4. But the Iron Warriors are big on the siege and fortification, and they're basically entirely against the Imperial Fists and are a major rival. Perturabo, I believe, is also still alive, and I'm also very interested to see what he looks like, because Demon Primarchs are badass.
Cool to see.
You've got the Night Lords with Primarch Conrad Kurz.
You know, it is.
Conrad Kurz is dead.
I was essentially
Good,
just thinking the
sick
same
fuck.
thing.
But the
especially
Night
'cause
Lords
this
are
is a
generally
very
about
clear, like,
terrorizing people and
mirror
terrorism.
of
They're generally
the
about
human
fear,
side.
and rightly so. You've got the World Eaters with Primarch Angron still alive. Also excited to see. Angron, if you think you've known an angry person, Angron is the angriest son of a bitch you will ever know. Angron removed parts of his brain that didn't make him angry, so he could be angrier. Angron. Fucker's mad.
Talk about
You've got
taking
Death
matters
Guard,
into
Primarch
your own
Terror.
hands. I had a
They have
nice
their own
thought. I
special
gotta
codex
take
that
it.
sells your army on tabletop.
Back to the
Terrarius
drawing
is
board.
actually one of the models, and look at him. Look at him. It's so cool looking. Of course, Nurgle based, obviously. So very slow, but very tanky. You've got the Word Bearers with Primarch Lorgar. Lorgar is, I believe, still alive. I don't know what's up with him at the current moment, but the Word Bearers are generally the people who caused all the major problems in the beginning. At least I blame them for it. They're little assholes. You got the Black Legion with Primarch Horus. Get fucked, nerd. You've got the Alpha Legion with Primarch Alfarius Omegon. Chaos.
Very cool.
I love that the color
And then
combination.
finally,
Yeah.
you've got the Thousand Sons with Primarch Magnus the Nerd. The Thousand Sons also have their own book, just like the Death Guard. Magnus is also a tabletop model. He looks super cool, as you can tell, and they're all super heavily Psyker and kind of Egyptian themed. They look pretty neat. But overall,
Very
with
cool.
all of these Chaos Space Marine factions, you can play as a lot of different ones, but the main ones that you can really work at are standard Space Marines, Chaos Space Marines, as well as the Death Guard and Thousand Sons, as they are the most fleshed out, especially on the tabletop at least. See this right here? This is a really good way to describe the Chaos Space Marines. What the thick-headed fools with their broken corpse of an emperor fail to understand is that not only can they never defeat us, but they cannot hide or flee or shield themselves from the triumph of chaos. They are finite and we are unbound, undivided. They must not err, or they shall fall to heresy. All who fall join our cause. Every imperial fool who dares to open his eyes is a willing recruit. They strive merely to hold back our fury and might, and it consumes them. Thus, you can see chaos is inevitable. We lurk not only beyond their grasp and at their gates, we lurk within the darkness of their souls, on the tip of their tongues, in their tortured dreams. We are them, but freed from the shackles of ignorance. We are them, grown strong, evolved. We are them, but so much more. As hardcore as that quote is, the saddest part is they're mostly right. Chaos is basically unkillable. You could probably get rid of Space Marines a decent amount, the Chaos Space Marines that is, but every soul that dies goes to the warp. Every Chaos soul will end up back in the warp. And depending on how hard you killed them, they will come back at some point. Every demon you banish will return. Chaos is unstoppable. The warp is unending. And while maybe there is at some point some way to stop them somehow, the resources to do so, the requirements to do so, are so far beyond the reaches of man and the other races at the current moment that really it's just an unstoppable force that just keeps on coming and is just barely being slowed. Chaos is by far the biggest threat. They are without number, their legions are everywhere, and yeah, they're pretty scary. So, I promise
Yeah,
you,
pretty
I'm done with humans now. Let's talk about some Xenos. So let's talk about the Eldar, or also known as the Eldari, which are a super hyper-specialized and very technologically advanced race of, well, elf people. They were, as well, responsible for the creation of Slaanesh, the newest demon god. How'd they do that? Debauchery on a world-ending scale. So back in the day, it was just Khorne and Tzeentch and Nurgle.
Interesting.
And the Eldar are very, very ancient. Millions of years. These Eldar, however, have a bit of a sensory problem. You know, every kind of pain or feeling that you have is a little bit amplified compared to the normal. However, with Eldar, as their race advanced so excessively, and they became so self-reliant, and everything became so easy, there was no requirement for food production anymore, there was no shortages, everything was basically done. Everyone was so comfortable. And that comfort breeded this weird sedation. And that sedation breeded the requirement for more and more debauchery.
Debauchery!
Debauchery! Debauchery! When everything you have
man.
can be so
I'm actually-
easily
I guess if you're
acquired,
bored, you got
it will
nothing else
end
to
up
do.
down
Yeah,
this
I-
get into
road
some
of
interesting
pure
stuff.
debauchery.
Yeah,
All of
I'm
the
really
senses
digging
the
the
Eldar had that were so
like
powerful,
the
things like
philosophical
feeling, happiness, sadness, and just evil and
like
good,
journey that
all
that,
needed to be
that you're going through
satisfied
there.
and
Like it is this
satiated.
idea of like
And
when you
the
have
desire
everything,
to
like
satiate
how
these senses grew
What do you
more
do?
and
what do you
more
do then?
What
and worse
happens?
and worse debauchery. It started off with things like sex and drugs becoming so much more rampant because these are the first things you generally turn to when requirements for living are so easily accessible. It would get to the point that made Sander Cohen in BioShock look sane. All right, this is the
Did you play
kind
that?
of
I actually
debauchery it
didn't.
led to.
It's a
It was constantly
really interesting
satisfying and
story
satiating
and
these
journey.
sexual and sadistic or masochistic fantasies that only elevated and elevated. And this was species-wide. People started going down darker, more depraved and more violent paths as time went on. However, some people didn't entirely
This is a
take to
horror
that.
movie.
Some of the Eldar were looking at this depraved species that they had become and said, no thanks for me, dog, I'm good. And they bailed. These are the Craftworld Eldar. They left on these giant continent-sized starships called Craftworlds. They believed in learning the old ways of the Eldar and pushing away from this depravity and debauchery and going back to their main roots. And so they would segment themselves on these giant Craftworlds far in the outer reaches of space. They even had this thing called the Webway. Remember when we mentioned about warp travel with the Imperium? Well, the Eldar had something way safer called a Webway. And the Eldar Webway is actually like a pocket dimension kind of thing. And in that pocket dimension, there were also more horrible, depraved groups and clans that would spend their time in there. And if you imagine the debauchery was bad already, these were debauchery X10. So all of this continued, and it bloated until Slaanesh just burst forth. All that emotion, all that mental, thought processes, I suppose, all of this in such a condensed space. Don't forget, this is all being shot, all their souls as well, into the warp.
Yeah, it's interesting that
All
it's
of
like
this
chaos is really
depravity
just like
right
collective
into the warp.
thoughts.
So what happened?
manifested
Boom!
into these
Slaanesh
physical
was
beings.
birthed
Yeah,
and
in a
killed
way,
off
it
90% of the entire
it's more
Eldar
human-like than a
population.
lot of the elements on the
Untold
human side.
Trillions,
Yeah.
The idea of
trillions had their souls ripped from their bodies and their actual fleshy bodies devoured by Slaanesh demons. The entirety of the Eldar race was eaten alive and their souls consumed to the Prince of Pleasure. All of them got fucked up. It was so bad
man.
that it literally ripped a warp hole into the fabric of the materium called the Eye of Terror. That's literally this like quasi horrifying gateway portal from the materium and the immaterium right next to Cadia. And it is horrifying. So
no.
this Slaanesh, also known as She Who Thirsts by the Eldar, slaughtered the entire population except for a couple. Those in the Craftworlds were actually not affected by this as they were so far in the reaches of the galaxy. That crazy crack, that birth of Slaanesh only affected the ones in the center. So these Craftworld Eldar were able to escape, but Slaanesh got their sights on them. Every time an Eldar will die, their soul doesn't just pass into the warp naturally. It goes straight to Slaanesh, Craftworld or not. What about those people in the Webway? Well, imagine that giant birth happening, but they were only able to just barely get a grasp onto you. Slaanesh was just barely able to hold on. These people are the Dark Eldar, or also known as the Drukhari. The Eldar population right now is so massively small. It is minuscule compared to any of the other most of the other populations in the universe. The Eldar are consistently having issues trying to get their population up because as their souls are constantly being hungered by from Slaanesh, they realize their entire species is doomed. And they understand it very well. Since the time of the fall, our race has been haunted by what we, in our reckless pursuit of hedonistic indulgence, gave birth to. Though our dreams once overturned worlds and quenched suns, we are now but fitful shadows clinging to the edge of existence. All the stars in the sky cannot blot out the hateful glare of the red moon's eye. The birthing place of the great enemy pulses with all the malice of a demon that is dreaming, casting its shadow over all we have ever done and all we ever shall. Every twisted strand of fate and casting of the runes leads me to this time, to this place, and it is clear that the final battle awaits me at the ancient Khorne worlds. A conflict the likes of which has not been seen since the Monkai warred amongst themselves and their corpse of a seer fell to his traitorous son. Is coming, and all my steps lead towards it, no matter that I walk other paths. I see the stars stained red with the blood of the Monkai, and though their wars do not concern me, I would gladly let them destroy one another. I know that to avoid this fight is to condemn my race to inevitable doom, and though all I see is darkness, I know that I will not flinch from my destiny. And now let's talk about cute plastic models.
Bro, I'm straight up not having a good time.
Man, it's just
First
crazy.
playable
Again,
race
this
we
world
have for
just
the
keeps
Eldar
getting like
are the
darker and
crafted Eldar
darker.
and
Just
living
like,
those crafted
yeah, they were all
Slaanesh mentioned
good, and it
earlier.
was
And each of
ecstasy
them
and
have their
bliss
own kind
and
of
wondrous
craft,
times.
But it wasn't good enough.
But they
Each
went
craft world is
in some
in
dark
itself
place.
its own special
Now
kind of
we are but a
group. The
shadow.
Eldar themselves are very fast
So-
and rely a lot on trickery.
so
they are
good.
squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in
All right,
tune
who
as
we-
psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race.
little
They got
bit.
potential.
Slaanesh.
They're still a doomed race, but they're on
they're
the
definitely doing a
uptick.
little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast.
They're
hunting,
slightly
and they
less
don't
doomed
make up
than
for
they were
tankiness to
before.
Make up for an extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier. That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world.
I was gonna say it sounds
Why
like
is it
monkey.
called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys.
Yeah.
On the tabletop, exactly what I
Amazing.
said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy.
Pretty
hit
sweet
like
color scheme, whoever
trucks
decided
and
that
move at
paint
Mach
job
5.
there. That's cool.
Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar. So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
All right. So that was a lot to soak in. I think my number one takeaway was the note that I made during the video was that a lot of like what makes some of these races even that much more kind of evil and like relatable, but in the sense of like, oh my god, this is like this is so dark, is because there's almost more human like qualities or human like thoughts or behavior that are deemed bad within these groups, like especially the chaos. And I think my favorite thought that I had while watching it was the idea that the chaos also have the idea of heresy on their side. Like it's actually like a tool to them.
Yeah.
Because it's like a mutual enemy of the human race. That was like such a cool idea and thought process to me when.
Well, and it was cool to understand. I mean, again, like a lot of what we learned about the Marines and the space Marines and all that was like, oh yeah, they're really good at. They specifically focus on killing heretics and demons, and it's cool to see like, oh, now we're learning about how the demons work and how heretics like pop up in the midst of in the ranks of any of these, different factions.
Right. Learning about the four gods was really cool too. The demons, the four chaos demons. That was really cool.
Chaos gods, yeah. And it is cool to see the two sides of them, the good and evil, you could say.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
Yeah.
It is very cool. I'm excited to learn more.
I know. I think too. It's funny how like we're judging these demons, and it's like, wow, they have more redeeming qualities than the humans do.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe it's just the way that Bricky's framing it, but I'm loving the optimism, like the positivity when talking about them.
Well, definitely creates some sort of like philosophical debate about these, demon gods, and we would love to know, like, where do you fall on that philosophical debate with these chaos gods, and what's some of your favorite factions with the chaos primes, I guess. Is
Yeah,
that what
yeah.
we would love to know.
Yeah, even simpler. Who's your favorite chaos demon? Right?
Yes.
I think that could open up some interesting discussion in the comment section.
Yeah. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can check out the rest. We're going to finish up with part 2 of Bricky's faction video, so stay tuned.